Hello and welcome to Macc-Pow at Home, a series of cosy chats with cartoonists and those from the world of comics, as always supported by Macclesfield Town Council. Thank you for watching the videos. As you know, if you're watching this on catch-up, you're not watching it live, hello to you as well. Thank you for joining us. If you want to pop any comments in the comment section, which is, I think, down there somewhere, you can do that. While we're chatting, I'm going to be chatting to my latest guest in a few minutes. You can pop those in there. Any questions? You know, if they're quite a good question, something I've not asked, then I'll put you on screen and you can get to do that. So yes, so feel free to do that, and you can like and subscribe to the channel. There's lots of other videos so far. We've been running this now for about 3 weeks. So yeah, build up a nice sort of set of creators. Very interesting. So without further ado, today my guest is Andrea Bell, cartoonist from America. I'm going to bring Andrea in now, but I've got my little. I was telling Andrea I've got a few little tricks on my sleeve, but she doesn't know about this one. But don't panic. It's good. Are you ready? There you go.
I love it.
As you can probably tell, there's literally it stops instantly. There's no expense spared.
Yeah, they're like, all right, and done.
It's just I was chatting to a lady called Yana Marishma. She's a literary agent for comics, and I did a much better job of pronouncing her name on Friday than I just did then. I was explaining to her that the crowd are very well trained. So yeah. they literally just stop.
Very polite.
Yes. So yeah. So Andrea, is it Andrea or is it Andy? I know because you've got kind of two kind of different names kind of going on.
Yeah, I mean either one works. Yeah.
So yes. So welcome to Macc-Pow at Home.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And so Macc-Pow at Home basically is the online version of the Comic Art Festival that I organise in my hometown here in Macclesfield in Cheshire, hence the supported by the Town Council. And as with everybody, we've all been sort of thrust into this online kind of world of communication and interviews and even live drawing and stuff like that. And it's, though everything else that's kind of going on isn't perhaps ideal for us, but it has given us afforded us these chances to talk to people like yourself who I might not have had a chance to talk to, and get to talk about your comics and what you do and how you work. So there's always a positive, isn't there?
Yeah, always a brighter side.
Yes. So I'm going to put up I've got as I said, I've got a few little things there. So yeah, Andrea Bell. Most recently, your comic The Leak, and then Diary of a Fifth Grade Outlaw. Oh, there you go. Fantastic.
I was already.
Yeah. So we're going to have a little chat about that and anything else that kind of comes along as we sort of start talking. I suppose I've known your work for quite a few years now, and I think the first time I was aware of your work was I submitted something to a thing called the Rascal Mag.
Oh yeah.
And somebody posted on Twitter whose name does come in my head, but the only reason I don't want to mention him is because I think I'll literally do the worst pronunciation of his surname. Yeah, it's Dave.
I was gonna say shite.
Yeah. I just couldn't think. Yeah. So it's Dave. So I think Dave posted that he knew of the Rascal Mag. They were looking for submissions, so I submitted something, and then they would then promote the other people that were going to be involved.
Yeah.
And you were one of them.
Yeah, I actually met up with one of the organizers last week, serendipitously, and I had forgotten what comic I had submitted, and it was a nice little catch up about it. But yeah, it's so funny that you brought that up, and that's our connection. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, no, I think it was one of those ones, and this is how, you know, a lot of us discover. That was sort of back in the old days when I was still only discovering people kind of on Twitter,
yeah,
not really through Instagram, where I probably discover more people now on Instagram because as with, you know, with comics, obviously it's a visual lead in straight away, isn't it? You discover the person after you discover their work, so you see their work first, and then you sort of find out who they are. Whereas Twitter was kind of like almost the other way around, wasn't it? It was more about you discovered them, maybe about what they've said, and then maybe you see their work and then go and find their website kind of thing?
Yeah, that's definitely, I usually find people first on Instagram, and then it's always Twitter's the secondary. And I guess I've been finding people on TikTok now too. I don't know if you're on that one.
So I'm a bit of an old man for that. So so you still use TikTok to find other creators?
Yeah, I mean it is a field to search through, but I think if you're on the app long enough, you know, it kind of curates your feed to what you're interested in. So at this point, I do get a lot of like creative illustration type videos coming through. And so I'll usually like click through, but I'm still clicking through and like following them on Instagram. So that's a really good point.
Right. So it always leads to kind of to Instagram. Yeah,
it's a perfect little portfolio for everyone. That's what I try to tell younger artists. It's like, get an Instagram, because you know, if you don't have a website, at least you can just get like a feed of all your pieces that way.
Well, this is the thing, because even people's websites these days aren't really as used as, you know, when I went to your website just to check which, you know, the best link, I don't really tend to visit a lot of creators' websites anymore, because as you probably know yourself, updating your website is the quite low down in the priority list, isn't it?
It's always a whole thing too. It's never just a quick update. It's like when I revisit my website, I'm like, oh, I want to change everything.
Well, that's the thing, yeah, because as opposed to it just being, well, I've just got this image there, it's the whole thing, isn't it? The structure, the design of it all, and it can date very, very quickly. Whereas with Instagram, it's of the time, isn't it? It's of the moment. Whatever the first you're sharing that people might see of yours is your most recent thing, unless it's obviously something you're sharing that's old. It's the most recent thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how I first kind of knew of your work, and then started following it because I really like your style. And then we kind of worked a little bit together because you contributed some comics to Goof, if you remember.
I do, yeah.
Goof was my kind of attempt at trying to sort of kickstart an online comic. And I always say, or people always say to me, things are a success by the very fact that they exist. So the fact that we did it was a success. It wasn't quite the financial success that I was kind of hoping, but we all got a chance to make some really cool comics, and those comics are still there. People can still check those out, and you were very kind to contribute a comic. The hardest thing for another creator to ask a creator to do is to contribute something where there's no money up front, because as I know, ideally when you do a job, you want to get paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
and I think you'll probably say, if you were talking about sort of the younger artists, it's great creating work, but if you want to do it as your job, it needs to have a monetary value to it as well, doesn't it? Yeah,
I mean, with Goof, it was a format that I really wanted to try out, and I had this idea. So, you know, if monetary wasn't there up front, it was serving other purposes. It was like, I want to play with this kind of idea. I want to stretch this, and not to say that work can't be used for or like not even like the exact work, but like I think my comic was like a how to be good. It was very like solid citizen, like pick up litter format. So I definitely have used like some of those storylines and ideals and brought it to other projects. So all good time spent in another place.
I mean, it is. You should never look at anything that you've done as not worthwhile. Everything gets you to where you're heading to, isn't it? Well, that's at least.
Yeah, I agree.
So how did you get into comics? What was have you always been a comics fan? What kind of comics were you reading, and how did that lead to you getting into comics?
Yeah, I guess I'll like sift through the back of my childhood. I mean, I read like the Sunday comics as a kid, Garfield, that kind of stuff. But I really got into comics when my cousin brought over so much manga, and I was so in love with it. I had just never seen, because I guess my interpretation of comics at that time was like Marvel, DC, newspaper comics, and then all of a sudden here are these comics about like a girl who's my age who like has a crush or is like a magical superhero kind of thing. And I was like, whoa, comics can be like so many other things, or like very quiet, slower paced stories. So yeah, that's how I got, I guess, my first interest into it. And then I was making my own little, I will only say I was making my own manga because I flipped the reading for it. And my parents are like, this is wrong. Why are you doing it this way? I'm like, it's different. And I did art here and there. And when it was time to go to university, college, whichever, I decided to go to a Columbia College in Chicago here for illustration. And a lot of my professors there were in the field. So I kind of just garnered some more appreciation that way. Because I thought I was going to go into animation, maybe storyboarding, and yeah, having more folks in the Chicago comic scene, I was like, maybe this is what I actually like.
Right. Mm-hmm. So there's quite a big scene there, is there?
It's a very lovely scene. We have Chicago Alternative Comics Expo, Cake, and Chicago Zine Fest, and
of course, yeah.
It just, all the creators here, like, very welcoming. A lot of really diverse and really cool style. Like, I feel very fortunate to have. I grew up outside of Chicago, so having this community so close by, I feel really fortunate to be here.
I think when I, so probably from following you on Twitter, which then obviously, as we said, leads to kind of like the Instagram, and then you have a look through, and it's like you click through and you see some images you like, and then I probably then saw some images of you at some of those events that you probably mentioned, which then leads to, because more often than not, sometimes when you're kind of, particularly in the early days, you might share a table with somebody. So that photo of you at your table with sharing with somebody else, you probably tag that person, and then you get to discover it created that way as well.
Yeah.
and it's kind of how it all kind of goes, isn't it, really?
It's kind of magical. And that's, like every time, I miss shows so much. And every time, like, you're exactly right. Like, I'll be, at my table, it's slow, and I'll like, oh, look at so-and-so's photo, and who are they tabling next to? And then you meet them later, you like find them through the hashtag, like C2E2 or whatever, and you go to their table like, oh, I just saw you on Instagram. Your stuff looks great. Yeah. It's, internet magical, and also a lot.
Yeah, you can always get sort of like some of these photographs. I don't know, maybe more so in the States. A lot of the people sort of table, and there's a real sort of eclectic mix of people, and and I always sort of just think, oh, that person looks really cool. I'm sure their work will be the same kind of. I mean, sometimes you click on their work, and it's totally different than what you're expecting, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, or not necessarily bad, but it's just not not to your taste kind of thing. But it's a really amazing way of sort of discovering people. And then slowly, I think you can then filter it down to a set of people that you like to follow, whose stuff that you are going to spend time in, sort of investing time with, whether it be commenting or liking their work, rather than just accumulating a big list of people that you follow. It's nice to sort of then reduce that down, I think, sometimes to a core group of creators that you really like.
Yeah.
Do people do that, or do they just accumulate? Do they just keep liking new people and then adding to the list? I don't know.
I imagine everyone's curating their feeds differently. For me, I like for Instagram, I always like, I don't know, my friends kind of tease me sometimes for not knowing certain like pop culture movie things, because I only follow mostly artists or friends on Instagram. And it's all like, I mean, regardless, like if I'm inspired by their work, like I want to add it to my feed. I guess like it is just a constant adding. But can get overwhelming.
Yeah, it can be. And I think it's such a tricky thing. I think one of the things that something stuck with me is that if people can try at least to invest a little bit of time to not just like a picture, but to comment on the picture. That really can help. Because it's nice when somebody makes a nice comment about your work, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really nice, and it's fun. Yeah, that's how I don't want to get too in the weeds about like social media, but that's how Instagram's algorithm is working now. It's with the saves and the shares or whatever. So it's less about the likes and the comments. So to make a piece that someone feels like an affinity with, that they want to comment or like share with, like that, yeah, that is like the biggest compliment. It's like, oh, they like this enough to like send it to a friend. That's really nice.
Yeah, because a like is really easy to do, isn't it? And we've probably all been guilty of where you just are going kind of through it and you might hit a little bit of a like because it's somebody whose work you do like, so you just automatically just like it without maybe stopping and really examining what it is that you're liking.
Yeah, and
that's the day and age we're in, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's another reason why I miss shows, because it's such a different process. Like you walk by someone's beautifully set up table and then you see a piece and you get to like look at it, stare at it for a while. You can talk with the artist and ask them like how they made that. And yeah, I miss that part of it a lot.
So you do a lot of sort of like the independent kind of shows? Do you ever do any of the so Macc-Pow is a small event in a smaller town, but I try to sort of have it's focused on comic art, so it's not about anything else. Like the bigger conventions become so much more. It's 100% focusing on the comic art, and the whole concept was to try and get known creators who maybe were sat next to somebody who was either brand new or independent, who was just kind of coming up or trying to find the feet. So there was no sort of hierarchy. Everybody was mixed together, and I know that's what you get a lot of the independent shows, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you have invitations and also applications for your event, or how do you curate it?
Yeah. So I have people that I approach, whose work I like. I'm very fortunate to have a few contacts with some big comic events. One. In a place called the Lake District, the Lakes International Comic Art Festival. I work for them and I've done workshops for them, and so they've got some great, amazing contacts, international contacts, and so I've been able to sort of work with them, and sometimes I've been able to approach somebody through them. Other times I literally just send emails. Somebody whose work I used to really like when I was younger and who's still around today and still doing it. So I see if I can tempt them with my very small budget that I have, and see whether that if they're willing to come along. And for the most part, yeah, they do. And then other people who I kind of put it out there and advertise it. And then over the past 5 years, year 5, I've done a year. I'm so confused now because we've missed 2 physical events.
Yeah.
But it was year 5 was the real year where people were now coming to me. It got out there enough that people had said, I've heard about Macc-Pow, and so they were coming from London on the train. We're a small town, sort of, but we're quite well connected. So we're like 25 minutes on the train from Manchester. I don't know if you've ever heard of Manchester. And then less than 2 hours from London. So you can get people who are in London, jump on a train and get a direct train to Macclesfield. And so they think, well, yeah, I could go there. And so it's kind of opens it up a little bit.
Yeah, that's really convenient, all those train lines.
Yeah, so and that's really helped. And then and it's a case of just I'm a creator as well. I'm passionate about making comics and sharing comics, and the whole idea of the event is to get people to understand, as this is, that comics aren't just necessarily about what you maybe think they are. The same way as that you discovered that comics aren't just Marvel and Batman and Superman and Spider-Man. It's these other things, which then leads back to the kind of stuff that you're now doing. So what was the first comic that you made where you really felt, well, this comic is like a starting point for where I'm now going?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So I went to Columbia College, and there was a comic section in the newspaper there, the Columbia Chronicle, that was called Free Ice Cream. I love that name. And I made I think it was a 4-panel strip comic that was called Big Answers from Little Dog. Okay. And it was just mostly conversations I normally would have with myself in my own brain, but in this comic format, I got to have it with a little dog. It was kind of a sadistic side of things. But I did that for, I think, one full, maybe 2 semesters, but by the end of it, I had all these strips and I was like, okay, I'm going to make a little mini comic. And that was kind of my first, like, I have a thing feeling. And I printed a bunch at my school and brought it to all the comic shops in the city that I could do like consignment with, printed some out to hand out at conventions to people that I liked.
and it kind of just went from there. So I suppose when somebody buys that for the first time, then you kind of then think, okay, there's something here.
Yeah, it was, yeah. So that was like the first time of assembling. I had the work and then I had to figure out the printing around it. So it was like going through that process for the first time. And then right after I graduated, I sought out this smaller press in Chicago called Yeti Press, and they were taking pitches to do like kind of a batch Kickstarter for like a fall and I think it was spring collection. So I was able to make another book called Rose from the Dead with Yeti Press, and that was like another stepping outside my comfort zone. I'm like, okay, now I'm working with an editor or like working with these people and I have a deadline with them, as opposed to like, you know, I'm printing this for myself, like to give away, whatever. This is like a thing for a Kickstarter. And I need to like stay on track. And I guess with like that book and the Little Dog book, I started garnering a little collection, and from there, like I would tag along with Yeti Press to certain shows, and I was like, oh, I want to do this myself. And so I started making more like self-published work. And yeah, and I guess I've never gone back from there. Just keep going.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? And that's how, yeah. And I think, and you mentioned then about where suddenly you've got a deadline, and that can be scary, but that is the fastest way for you to know whether you've really got it in you to be able to do this for a living, because the aspiration for anybody who wants to make comics and make it for their living is to have a publisher who says, well, I want you to do this for me, and you'll know yourself now that when that happens, you've then got to be able to turn around pages of content on certain deadlines, haven't you?
Yeah, and I'd say like I was pretty good in school. Like I good in the sense of like I enjoyed getting things done on time and I turned them in, like that kind of sense. Yeah. So I think like jump starting, like graduating and then being able to find a new project, like a new assignment, which with this other press, I felt like a continuation of schoolwork almost, where I was like, oh, okay, this is the next person that I am going to give work to because this is the deadline for it. Which, yeah, to me, it's like, that's what life is. I just have homework assignments for different clients and I have to turn them in.
And I think it's when you're self-publishing, when there's nobody looking for your work other than you want to get it out there, when you're still, you're upcoming and no one's there waiting for your work, that it's down to you to, well, I'm putting this out now, and then that's when people will discover me. If you give yourself a deadline, even then, it just helps get you used to making comics, doesn't it? Yeah, and for a while, all my deadlines were the shows I was being accepted into. So after I got into I think my first solo show was Comic Arts LA Cala. It was the first year they were doing it. And I was like, all right, like I got to get this book printed before, I got to get it drawn and printed and whatever before December 5th or whatever the date was. Yeah. So yeah, those became like my new deadlines, for better or worse. But that's how, and that's for any aspiring creators who might even be watching. That's how you do it, isn't it? You if you set yourself that deadline, you know then what you can achieve in a certain space of time, and you work back from the event to when the printer needs the comic from you, and how long it will then take them to print it. So you're working back, and then you go, right, okay, the printer needs it for this day, and I know this is going to be however many pages. When do I need to start this, or have I got enough time?
Yeah.
To do it, and so yeah, these deadlines are a great way to motivate, because I think when it's so open ended, you'll probably never finish anything.
Yeah, and that was my one of my professors, Chris Eliopoulos, Elio.
Oh, right. Yeah. So I was going to say, is that Chris? And I thought, I don't know whether you could, but it's when you said the free ice cream.
Yes. That was I always bring this up. This is one of the best pieces of advice, and he gave it to me after I had graduated. He asked about Fair Voyage, which was the fantasy series I was self-publishing, and he's like, how long is it going to be? And I was like, I don't know, it's going to be an epic tale. And he's like, 100 pages. So like breaking, and then like I broke it down into kind of mini books from there. But yeah, I'm really close with the illustration group that's still out of Columbia, like through Elio and through some other faculty. And I like that just seems to be, there's a lot of young artists there that want to do shows and like are interested in comics, but just it's hard for them to kind of see the finish of it, of like having the printed books and being at the show, like applying to it, printing it, creating it. So I like taking these opportunities to kind of break it down of like, I was flying by the seat of my pants too. Like, just got to get it done.
Because we're all, we're all just sort of testing the waters, aren't we, to see, and there's nothing nicer than being stood behind a table with your work in front of you, and then somebody buys something that you've made. It's such an incredible thrill. And that then inspires you, and then people come back, and then then you can get a bit of a following, and people maybe have bought your comic, and then afterwards they then send you a message saying how much they enjoyed it, or now we've got all these abilities to tag people and go, and people share photographs of the work that they've got from a creator. And I think it's interesting you mentioned that about the younger sort of creators, because obviously at this point none of them really know about the world of comic events because there haven't been any.
Yeah, that is that breaks my heart, but I'm hoping soon. And there's a lot of digital events like this that are happening, so finding those resources are good too.
Because one of the things I want to do as well with all of these, and I've asked everybody, and I'll ask you the same thing, is talking about how people work. So am I right that you work digitally, or how do you make your comics? How do they come about?
Yeah, they're all digital now, but I think I went fully digital. What year is it? Like maybe 3 years ago. So I was doing like sketching and inking by hand for a while, and then scanning in and coloring digitally. But yeah, I guess since I got hand-me-down Cintiq is when I switched over to all digital and sped up my process exponentially. So I don't know if I could go back.
It's so weird because they really do make you do things quicker, and I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I suppose if you're drawing pencil, and so were you originally penciling and inking, or did you just go? How are you working?
Yeah, like a light blue pencil and inking over, scanning in. Yeah.
And do you still do that digitally, but traditionally? So do you still pencil and ink, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's my process is pretty straightforward. Like light blue pencil on a layer with low opacity, ink over that, and then coloring's my favorite part. So I think I'm just like trying to get to the coloring process as fast as possible.
Because as we mentioned at the start, I've known you work for quite a few years now, and it's unfortunate with the way that that there's so much content out there that with Instagram, we keep mentioning Instagram, they're getting free adverts from us today. But you know yourself, and I think we talk about the algorithms, that your content can get sort of hidden. And it's not until suddenly like a name pops back into your head, or you see that name because of, well, for instance, and we'll talk about this, and somebody's asked a question about this, so it's a nice lead in. Suddenly your name popped back for me, and I, you know, I don't think your work has ever suddenly disappeared, but your name popped back to me because of the most recent work that you've done. And then I must have then gone back to your Instagram just to see. I think, oh, I'm sure have you just not been posting things, and then obviously just seeing that your content has just kind of slipped from my feed, and then seeing the amazing work that you've done. This is what I'm rambling to get to. Is that I always like your work, but now I look at some of the stuff you're doing, and particularly the colouring is just amazing. They're beautiful pieces.
Oh, thank you.
I think the image that you sent over, I used for that will be the little thumbnail, is of the image of the person who's stood at are they a hotel or a motel?
Yeah, yeah.
And the colouring is beautiful. So I can really see. I think your colouring has definitely evolved and become something so much more of a real sort of part of your work. And so I can see that's why that's the most fun part.
I think like in school, that was always the thing I thought I had a lot of trouble with. So I've been hyper focused on it for a few years now. So this is very nice. Thank you.
You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
So I was going to ask this question, but we've got a question. So I'm going to put this on here. This is from a lady called Danka, and she's been watching all the videos. And so I'm going to let's put Danka's question on there.
Great.
Are you all right? Okay, it's not actually. Now I read it now. It's are you working on anything now? Could we have a sneaky peek?
Oh my goodness.
We could do that as well. But the one thing I wanted to mention, so we will get to that, Danka. But we'll finish off towards with that. But I wanted to talk about the leak, which is your most recent published work. So we'll talk about your next project after this, if that's
okay.
So you flashed up the leak a minute ago, but let's be proud of this.
Yay! I really love how the cover turned out too.
And look how many pages is that? Because look at that spine.
Yeah, it's drawn page. I think it's 232 and then some change. So it's definitely my biggest project to date. So I was gonna say, you're like, oh, I haven't seen her post. Perhaps it was because I was inundated with this one, but
So how long were you working on that?
This one, I believe I had done some test pages in the summer of 2018, and then I started properly working on it that fall, and so and then it came out in March of this year. So 2.5-ish years. It wasn't constantly. There's bouts after all my work's done of like going in for the final touches, but yeah, just 2.5 years in the making, and definitely wasn't the environment for the world that I thought this book was going to come out into, but everyone's been super kind and sharing it online and things, so it makes up for not having the shows with it.
Yeah, you'd be dying to be stood with it in front of you on a table.
Yeah. Which it'll still happen in the future.
Of course it will. Yeah. I think so. So with this one, you've been working with another writer.
Yeah. Kate Repetti, amazing person to work with, and honestly, her story. That's what really got me motivated to keep going on such hard days, is like the story of Ruth wanting to be a journalist and trying to do the right thing. It's so touching. She's so talented.
So how did she have the deal already, and then she came to you, or were you? How did that come together? Do you know her already, or?
I didn't know her. I haven't met her either, like in person yet. Yeah. So, but I believe, so what happened is I was doing shows, and I had met 3 editors from First Second just at like a Toronto show, a Chicago show, a Seattle one, and I had met 3 different. And I guess when they were working with Kate's story and that she needed an illustrator, they saw my business card and reached out. So it paid to like do like 3 shows consecutively that year. Yeah, so I did some test pages and they liked them, and so we worked together to make the book after.
And so how does that work then when you're doing that? Do you have to turn in a certain amount of pages as you're completing them to sort of show that you're, or do you and do they who advises on any changes? Is that both the editors and the author, or
yeah, it depends on which stage in the process. For the leak, I believe it was set up that they had asked, I mean, I guess I could have set it up anyway, but I believe it was like they wanted to see like all my pencils, like all the composition first, and then I think I showed them, like I showed them in stages, so pencils, inks, and was uploading, I think, the color passes in chunks so they could kind of digest them that way. And there were, I think there was more input from Kate when it was collectively more put together. So if like there was a full PDF of inks to like look through all that. And then like a lot of good collaborative feedback toward the end when it was a more finished piece that we could like talk about pacing in certain pages or certain dialogue, things like that. But yeah, I love the first second team. Yeah, Robin Chapman, my editor on this, and like Smina, like everyone there, Mark Siegel as well, like so kind and like just really great, like back and forth. So if someone like had a question or wanted to, you know, bring something up about the story, like we just had a conversation over email about it. It was always really productive.
So it's a real collaboration. It's not just you and the author just doing your thing. It's a real group of people.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't spell. Like I need an editor. I need a lot of people. So I'm happy to work with a team like that. It makes me feel like we're making the best finished product at the end of the day.
And you lettered it all as well, so it's all.
Oh, I did not. I think I tried to letter for my test pages, and like rightly so. Like that's, you know, I told you coloring was my hyper focus in college. I think lettering needs to be my hyper focus now. Not the best, but no, it was beautifully like laid out digitally, and I like, yeah, worked with the designer as well, Sunny. So like even that, I was like a little bit a part of the process there.
Right. No, well, it's nice to sort of be, even if you're not doing all the elements, it's nice to still be involved. I think because as you know, as a creator, there's nothing worse than because you want full control, don't you? You kind of, it's hard to hand over your stuff, isn't it, to somebody else because you.
Yeah.
Not going to do it the way that you would do it, but then if you don't have if your confidence isn't in certain areas, you know you can't do it as well as you would like to, but you're still handing over your stuff to somebody else, aren't you?
Yeah. And I sometimes it's like I want all control because I like see it in my mind's eye and I know how to execute. But other times, like handing something over, I'm like, oh, I hope they don't judge my files or like my layers set up, which never happens. But I'm always like, is this okay? Like, is this too many layers? But
in different ways anyway, don't they?
Yeah.
So there's no real right or wrong way. It's whatever gets the comic out there. And I suppose that's true of how any comic looks. There's no real way that a comic should look, how a comic should be. There are certain sort of rules to kind of to follow, but I think the more confident you can become as a creator, the more that you can then start to play with those rules and even start to break them, can't you? So you kind of have to learn the rules of, well, when you're doing a panel, you've kind of got to leave the top third kind of clear, so for the lettering for the most part, and not sort of get carried away and just, you know, and give the letterer a challenge as to, well, what part of this beautiful drawing do I have to cover up now? Because there's always things in your mind, isn't there, that you've got to follow those rules. But then it's fun then once you get the confidence and you have the know-how to make a comic that you can start to break them as well.
Yeah, that's the most fun.
Yeah, definitely. So so the leak came out in March this year, didn't it?
Yep.
And I know, and I think I actually, in fact, I think you popped back on my Instagram feed when you went live with the, sorry, I forget the author's name is.
Oh, Kate. Yeah.
Kate, yeah. And you were chatting, I think it was through First Second, but you were chatting on Instagram, which then I think from listening to you guys chatting prompted me to think, oh, well, I'll ask you to do this. So it was nice how that kind of came. So you finished. So when did you actually finish the comic? When was it done?
I think early. Well, I think, yeah, I want to say that I got our first, like, the full pass to edit the beginning of 2020, but I think I finished at the end of 2019.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so
around that time.
Yeah.
So this is your job. You are a full-time cartoonist, and this is how you, yeah, and that's a nice feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, I like couldn't. Little Andy, you know, this is all she really wanted. So I like am really loving the work that's coming through, and yeah, I'm always like, I'm open to other opportunities. I'm going to be teaching a class at Columbia in the fall, so like anything, it's all in the realm of illustration though, so I couldn't be happier.
And is that a comics class?
It's going to be an intro to illustration class.
Right. Okay. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What, digital illustration or just illustration in general?
Sorry, what was the first part?
Is that a digital illustration, or is it just illustrating in general?
I believe it's more like an introduction into the industry itself and like different facets of it. So not necessarily techniques, although I'm sure that'll be covered. As you see, I'm well versed in what I'm going to be teaching.
No, I think you've done a lot of research. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
we're going to get down to it for sure.
I think if you just turn up on the day you know you're supposed to be there, or maybe turn up the day before just in case you got the date wrong.
Yeah.
And then just go for it. I think I think, you know, anytime that you're sort of getting a chance to do something like that is really cool, because I think it also is a nice learning experience for you as well, because it kind of helps validate that what you're saying to other people, it kind of makes you hear in your head and you think, I kind of do know what I'm doing. And
yeah,
because we all have the imposter syndrome, don't we? Which is, you know, at times, but then that slowly can disappear, because if you think to yourself, well, I must be doing okay if I'm getting work. If people are paying me to do this, then I can't be that much of an imposter. And I think, and the more work you get, the less time you have to think about things like that. So, so even though I think we kind of answered, and Danka did actually say that's fine, that was a good answer. What are you working on now? What is, so after you finish? So and that's why I was asking you. So you finished the leak at the start of last year. Have you just been sort of sitting around, relaxing, or have you been working on the night?
I wish my brain would let me relax like that. I have another book coming out with First Second in November as well. It's part of the Maker series. It's Conduct a Science Experiment, and Dershing Helmer was the writer on that project. So that'll be coming out in November. But that one is already wrapped up as well. So I guess at the moment I'm actually trying to dive into more writing. So writing a story and also illustrating it. So I'm working on that right now on some projects.
So like a self-published thing, or?
To be pitched out. So hopefully if somebody would like to publish it, that would be nice. But yeah.
Once you have these connections, then it does help it. You know, you've got these direct, because all anybody wants really, as sort of aspiring creators or up and coming creators, or even people who have had some work published, once you've got an email contact for an editor, it does make things a little bit easier, at least the first hurdle, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I did sign with some agents, so also bringing them on board has been really great to just take some of the load off of certain emails. It's nice to have people support you, so I'm really thankful for them as well.
So the agent, do they share your work around in the right circles and then come to you with possible projects? How does that work?
It's worked in a lot of different facets so far. I've been with them for about a year, and they're really great brainstormers too. Like if I'm ever stuck on a thing that I'm writing or trying to pitch out, like always down for a call to sort some thoughts out. And so they've also negotiated on my behalf, and they've been able to take my pitches and send them out to their contacts who I might not be contacts with, and start the conversations that way. And I've also, like, I think, I was linked up with like another person they represented who was needing some illustrations. So they've definitely have been a game changer. So I'm just excited. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Mm-hmm. So, well, I've really enjoyed chatting to you, and I'm sure you've got a busy day ahead to get some more comics made. Are you do you share sort of I know on your Instagram, you're kind of sharing things to do with the leak particularly and stuff like that, but do you ever do little Instagram comics and stuff like that that just to keep your hand in? Or do you do stuff like that as well?
Yeah, I feel like Instagram is almost like my what's like a live journal at this point. Like I do a lot of autobiographical stuff on there, or I do a little bit of that on my Patreon. I have a newsletter there that I guess I'm updating more regularly. But I still like coming to Instagram and posting little pieces, little autobio comics.
Do you have a good? Does Patreon work for you? Do you get? You got okay following on there?
Yeah, I love my patrons. They're super kind, and like I have a newsletter and like a monthly playlist, and I just started up like a mini print club. Yeah, so that's been really great. It's just I can take the illustration that I'm going to use for the print, but it's like an exercise or like just a nice sit down to do something casual instead of like I guess it's technically still for work, but for me, I'm like, I'm just drawing and having fun, and I'm like not worried about this at all.
But that's a nice way to do it, isn't it, as well, to sort of just be creating something. And I think, again, particularly this past year, as creators, you want to still make content, but the ability to get it out there, as you say, the physical shows hasn't been there. So it's, well, let's make some content and just put it out there. But the pressure's not been as much because we've all had this extra time, so to speak, to do stuff. So you're just creating things for fun that potentially can turn into work.
Yeah.
Which is a great thing. We've got to look at the positives, haven't we? Amongst all the craziness of what's been going on. So
absolutely.
and yeah, so thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed chatting to you, and like I say, I'm a fan of your work, and hopefully, I'm hoping that Danka, who was asking questions, she's going to go and start ordering your work as soon as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. This was really nice. A nice way to start my day.
So what time is it with you?
It's just about to hit 9 a.m. So
really? Right.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So I'm nearly at 3 o'clock. So I can just let you know that from between 9 and 3 o'clock, nothing really has gone wrong in the world. You're okay. So you can just take it easy today, knowing that you're okay today.
Perfect. That's all I needed to hear.
So just before we go there, so one of the things you're desperate to do is get back to doing a show. So have you got any physical shows coming up?
I have a small local show at a brewery in town that'll be outside. So I'm like, this will be a nice toe touching or tiptoeing into a convention. But I think I've kind of resigned the fact that I probably won't get back into the bigger shows until next year.
And have you ever done any shows abroad?
I haven't, but I want to. I've had a lot of friends do Thought Bubble.
Yes, Thought Bubble.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't done much research about all the shows you were mentioning, like yours, of course, and then like the Great with the Lakes.
So the Lakes International. So the Lakes International Comic Art Festival. It's a mouthful. That takes place in October, and then pretty much a month later, that's when Thought Bubble is. And I think they're definitely seen as the two kind of, again, there are other events, and some in 2019, some new events started to pop up, which we're planning on then coming back the next year, and obviously could. But they're the kind of the more established two, and quite different in their approach. The similarities are that they're focused on the comic art, so it's all about the comic art. I think the Thought Bubble is probably more of a familiar kind of convention, but still has a very independent spirit. So, like I say, a known creator next to somebody who is maybe tabling for the very first time, that kind of thing. And then the Lakes is a little bit more European in terms of it's in the town hall, it's in the little art centre, it's in the little bar down the road, it's spread across the town, kind of thing. So it's
okay,
which is kind of out of the two. I think Macc-Pow as a smaller event, that's the model I'm kind of going for, is a smaller version of that. So we're in the library, we're in the town hall, we're going to be here, and we're going to be, somebody's going to have a table outside somewhere, and that kind of thing. So one day, you never know, we might get to meet in person and come to England and see some of the great events that take place here.
Yeah, I would love to. I've been meaning to get over there for a while, so good excuse.
Yeah. So, well, have you got anything you'd like to add before we finish? Have you got anything you want to share in terms of your social media links? Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can head to my website. Thank you, Mark. And I have everything on there. Or I'm at Andy Harvest on Instagram, or at Andy Harvest, on Twitter.
So where's the Harvest? Because this is why I always meant to ask you that. So why Andy Harvest?
Oh, it's such a nerdy reply. That's just been my online persona since I was like 8, because I loved Harvest Moon, the video game.
Oh, right, okay. Right.
Yeah, and I just that was my name, like for fan art or fan fiction accounts. I don't know if those exist still, but I just kept the name. I liked it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, like I say, it's been so nice to meet you and chat to you and talk about your work and your process and see your great books. So please carry on making these great comics, and I hope you stay busy. And just to say that on Friday, I'll be talking to US cartoonist Steens at 7 p.m.
They're so great.
UK time. So I'm looking forward to that. But for now, and again, the crowd are ready, Andy. So let me just So thank you very much to my guest, Andy Harvest. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Andrea. Bye-bye.
Bye.
There you go. Well, there you go. Well, that was fantastic. Thank you so much to Andrea, Andy Harvest, ANDREA BELL, for chatting to me. Go and check out our work at our website. The link was there throughout the video. Thank you for watching. If you watch live, thank you for watching. If you're watching on catch up, stay tuned for more videos on Friday at 7 p.m. UK time, BST. I'll be chatting to cartoonist Steens. And until then, thank you to Macclesfield Town Council for your support. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.